Welcome to Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant podcast. These are the stories of those who have received, given, and who are waiting for the gift of life, organ transplantation. Now here's your host and heart and kidney recipient, BJ Odom.
Welcome to the Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast, a place where we journey through the incredible world of organ transplantation. I'm your host, BJ Odom. Each week we uncover inspiring stories. We meet extraordinary individuals who are connected to the world of transplants. Remember to support us by leaving that 5-star review and subscribing on your preferred podcast platform. And don't forget to join us on Facebook, Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. On this, episode 31, we meet Carrie Tanner from Phoenix, Arizona, who woke up one morning and told her husband, "I'm going to donate my kidney." From there, she decided to head to UCLA Medical Center to be tested and start her very own giving chain, to later find out that her kidney had went from Los Angeles to the East Coast to make a woman very happy with a working kidney transplant. They remain friends today and talk often. As we get things started, Carrie Tanner, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, BJ. Thanks for having me today. I am a Phoenix, Arizona native, born and raised there. Have lived most of my life in the Valley of the Sun. I have a husband and 3 kids that are now grown and out of the house. I am a pharmacist by background, and I am the chief pharmacy officer for a consulting firm that does consulting around healthcare and pharmacy benefits.
Wow, that's, you know what, that is a cool occupation, especially, being involved in the world of transplants now. I mean, it's opened to your eyes probably as some good and some bad. That's just going to be my wild guess.
Yeah, interestingly, my journey into becoming part of the world of transplants was a little bit different, I think, or unique. Being that I'm a pharmacist, I've treated patients that are on transplant medications and, have had transplants. But being the fact that I had spent most of my career in kind of corporate America, I didn't have a lot of direct interaction in the back half of my career with patients. So I used to bring a patient story to life in my monthly meetings with my staff. And many years ago, I was bringing a story for our monthly staff meeting, and it was about a little girl who needed a transplant. And so that was actually my first kind of deep dive into becoming kind of intricately involved, if you will, with the world of transplants. I hadn't really been that way before. So it's an interesting transition. I was never a pharmacist that kind of had a lot of hands-on interaction with patients around transplants, but I really just wanted to showcase a patient that we supported in our healthcare, kind of their healthcare journey, because I was on the insurance side of the house. And so I kind of showcased a girl who needed a transplant, and it got me very interested in the world of transplant and the number of people in the United States specifically who needed a kidney transplant.
And of course, we will, start your journey with what your problem was and when you were diagnosed. But after being in the medical field, kind of knowing about, the different drugs, what was the feeling you had when you first knew that you were going to, join the club here of us transplant patients?
So, it's kind of a funny story, but I am one of those people who have always donated blood, and I've been on the bone marrow registry my entire life, and, always interested in helping others. I think you have people who have just innate altruistic kind of a sense about them. And after, looking at this girl who needed a transplant, who was a teenager, she had actually had a transplant early in her life and needed another one. I remember waking up in the morning and telling my husband, honey, I think I'm going to donate a kidney. And, my husband is never shocked at any of the things that come out of my mouth, but he said, "To who? To who are you donating a kidney?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, but I was doing some research, and there's over 90,000 people in the United States who need a kidney, and somebody needs my kidney. I just don't know who that person is yet. And I said, so I'm going to see what I can do about donating a kidney to someone in need. I don't know anyone personally who needs a kidney, but there are 90,000 plus people out there that I don't know who do need kidneys. I'm healthy, I'm active, I lived a very, clean life. I don't abuse my kidneys. And so I really just felt this kind of calling to do something different and help somebody that was in need. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter who the person was. It didn't matter, what part of the country they were from, how old they were, what their political beliefs were, what their cultural beliefs were. I just felt like, I could help somebody. And so that day, I called the National Kidney Registry and I said, how do I become a donor? I don't know anyone who needs a kidney. How do I donate a kidney? And, they kind of walked me through the initial steps of the process. And very shortly thereafter, I found myself in Los Angeles at UCLA for a couple days, which is not where I'm from. But I went over there and spent 3 days doing all the testing to donate to person X, to someone who I would hope to someday meet, but didn't know who they were.
Okay. And so let us continue in your story.
Yeah. So one of the, outcomes of spending a few days and you meet other people that are there because they're trying to donate their kidney to their mother or their brother or their sister. So I met a few other people who were on their own kidney journey and knew the person they were donating to. And by that time, I had spent some time looking at the National Kidney Registry, looking at what other people were going through, whether it was paired donation or chains. And so I became very excited about the opportunity that I could potentially have to start a chain, because I didn't know anybody who needed a kidney transplant. And because there were so many people on the registry who had a loved one or family member or friend who had been listed as their pair and was willing to pay it forward, I could be the beginning of a kidney chain. So that option really excited me. So as I was leaving UCLA, leaving with the approval of what they have a kidney committee there that, reviews all of your both kind of clinical and psychological evaluations. And I was approved. The National Kidney Registry said, they would, look for my perfect match. And the first match that came through was a child. It was a 9-year-old boy. And I was a match for him, but he did not have a paired person on the registry. So it would be just a single donation. I would be donating to him and it wouldn't be a pay it forward chain. But I was very excited about the opportunity to help a child that could, potentially have a very long life with my kidney. And so I agreed to do that donation and unfortunately found out another week or so later that the physician for that child had declined my kidney because they were really wanting someone who was in their early 20s. And I was, in my 40s, and that wasn't what their ideal match was. So they wanted to wait a little longer and find another match. So we kind of went back to the drawing board with NKR, and they came back a few days later and said that they had found another match on the registry, and this one did have a paired donation opportunity, and they had already found a match for that paired donation opportunity and had the beginnings of a chain. And they had the beginnings of a chain out a couple of people. So we quickly put together the plan, and just a couple weeks after having that conversation, I was driving to LA with my husband to have surgery. And, we drove that the day of the surgery, made it into LA, and in that evening had my kidney removed my kidney took the kind of night flight to New York. So it went from coast to coast, right? It went from Los Angeles all the way to New York,
Wow.
to New York Presbyterian Hospital overnight to be transplanted into a person. I knew she was in her 60s. I knew she lived in New York. That was about all I knew. I knew that, obviously she needed a kidney and that she had a paired donor that was willing to pay it forward. So she had her kidney, my kidney, placed that next morning. And her paired donor had their kidney removed that same day, the day she had hers, her surgery to have my kidney placed. And his kidney went forward to another Northeast hospital where it was placed, and another one moved forward. And I believe the last one that we know of went all the way back to the West Coast into kind of the Bay Area. So, I think it might have been Seattle, not the Bay Area, to correct that. But, coast to coast twice, we saw a number of kidneys be, at least the beginnings of the chain. The unfortunate thing is you never know. You don't know where the chain kind of went or continued on. But we know it made it, at least in that first week, we know we were able to do several kidney transplants. And, that became the end of my kidney journey at that time. I mean, I healed very well. I stayed in LA. I did some walking. I had some friends and family in town. Went back to kind of normal daily activities after a few weeks, went back to normal functioning, my single kidney, after about 6 months. But really that became kind of the end of my journey, because I had sent through a letter to the recipient family, kind of my donor letter, and I never received any response. So that became the end. And that's something that, as an altruistic donor, that you don't know the recipient, that you have to be prepared for, that you may never know. You may never know how that person's doing. You may never have a personal relationship with them. But, I woke up every day knowing that there was somebody that was hopefully living a much better life than they had before, because they were walking around with my kidney. And that became the end of the story for a couple of years. A couple of years went by before the story ever changed. I was just a donor that gave my kidney to some woman that lived in New York, on the other side of the country.
Now, let me ask you this. Before you donated the kidney and you were getting, to those final, days or hours, were you ever hesitant, or was it always positive forward?
It was always positive forward. You get all of the documents placed in front of you, and the anesthesiologist comes in, and the multiple surgeons, and they tell you your risks, right? They tell you your risks associated with surgery, with recovery. And I think for some people that may be a little bit of a wait. Hold on, let me think about this a little bit longer. But I had several surgeries before. I actually had my last child, my daughter, I had her via C-section. They were going to go through that same scar. I do very well in surgery. I've never had complications for surgery. So it didn't bother me. I think that for other people, that may be where they start to have that moment of pause and, oh my gosh, am I making the right choice? And I think for some other people, the concern that what happens if it doesn't go well, right? What happens if you remove your kidney, and it doesn't go well for them, and they don't get the value of that kidney? Have you done this all for nothing? Are you going to be able to live with that? So, I mean, some of those more kind of, thought-provoking moments happen as you're going into it. But for me, the benefit of knowing what I was able to accomplish was, it far outweighed any concerns I had at the moment. I never second guessed my choice going into the surgery.
Good deal. Now let's continue on with your story.
Yeah. So, a couple years goes by, and I joined some donor walks. I talked to my even local donor organization in Arizona and talked about, are there any other pathways that I should be entertaining to try to reach out and, make sure that my recipient, is living a prosperous life. I mean, I didn't need to necessarily have a relationship with the person, but it would have made it a little easier, I think, for me just to know that she was thriving, right? And that things were going well for her and that it had positively impacted her life. I lived thinking that it probably did, but I never knew, right? So a couple of years goes by and, COVID happens, and there's a significant impact in the New York area, and I had a lot of conflicting emotions about this person is probably on heavy medications to not reject the kidney. They're probably at higher risk for COVID, for the infection. I hope they're doing well, and so I wrote a second letter. And I wrote a second letter and sent it through the same channels I sent it the first time, through at UCLA, my donation center, and then into the New York Presbyterian Donor Center. And I will never forget the day that I had an email that came back, and it was a letter from the recipient. And I happened to be in Florida that day. We'll never forget it. Immediately started crying that now I had a name. I knew who she was. I knew that she was doing well. I knew that it had positively impacted her life. And so I immediately responded to her. She had never received my first letter. She had sent me a letter that I had never received right after the transplant occurred. And so, here we were a couple years after the transplant, over email meeting for the first time, getting names. And we didn't wait. We had a Zoom meeting that night with not only her and her significant other, but the donor who paid it forward, that was her paired donor, and his significant other, and myself and my husband. And we had a Zoom meeting because, here we are in the throes of COVID. There was no chance we were going to get together in person at that moment. We were in different states. And for the first time, we all cried. We got to know each other. I got to hear her story for the first time. I got to hear, what she had been able to do since the transplant, how it had changed her life. And we kind of made our own commitments to each other to keep in touch and to get together as soon as kind of COVID had come down. We would meet for the first time, and we did later. And after COVID kind of passed, we met for the first time in Los Angeles, actually at UCLA, at the hospital that I donated from. She happens to have family in Los Angeles, so she came to Los Angeles, and we met at this place that I had donated my kidney, and we got to share in some special conversations about the life that she has been able to lead since the time of receiving the kidney. She's gotten to see her first grandchild be born into her family. She's gotten to be much more active. She's does a lot more traveling now that she is more capable. So we remain friends today, right? We remain close. We talk back and forth on the phone, we text, we keep up with each other on social media. And I happen to work in New York on occasion, so she'll come to Grand Central Station, take the subway in, we'll have lunch. So it's been a huge change, going from 2 years of not having any idea to now knowing exactly who the person is and getting to see the life that she's capable of leading today, and knowing that I have a small piece in that, and it's incredibly rewarding.
Now, you mentioned that when you read the email, you obviously had tears and you had, these feelings that overwhelmed you. Now, how was the actual meeting? Because I can only imagine if you had tears reading the email, when you two met face to face, what was that meeting like? Because I'm thinking that must have been like, boom, a big explosion for you both. Yeah, and I'm talking about in a good way too.
Yeah, it was. She had family present. I had a friend present. We We actually have it videotaped of us kind of coming around two different corners of a building, and you see kind of the overwhelming emotion from both of us of knowing that kind of we share a bond that you don't see, and there's not very many people in the world that are part of that family of individuals that are sharing organs, and it was pretty overwhelming. We were kind of immediately hugged and cried, and then we both sat down. We did some interviews, and we all went to lunch. Our families went to lunch and got to spend time together. It was a culmination of, at that point, several years of kind of waiting to meet the person that's forever connected to you. So it was incredibly emotional. It was very overwhelming, almost to the point where there's no words that kind of describe that, that feeling of meeting somebody that you would never have known them. You would probably pass them on the street a million times in your life and never know who they were. And now you're kind of forever connected to them in a way that most people will never experience. So it was pretty overwhelming.
Now, what I really find heartwarming about your story also is that, a lot of people go into it, like you said, to be in a chain because, they have a friend that needs one, but they don't have someone that matches them. And they say, well, I'll give a kidney. Let's find someone that matches them. And that kind of helps them, to find a kidney a little bit faster. But to one day just wake up and say, I've done some research on this. I work in the medical community. This is just something I want to do. To me, this is a truly amazing story, just due to the fact that you weren't doing it for anyone specific. You were just doing it because you felt it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think that, there's so many people out there that see a mobile donation center for a blood bank and have an, overwhelming desire to just help. And in the back of their mind, they're thinking about those people that were in a car accident or those people they don't know that could be, utilizers of their blood. Or, you think, even me, when I was very young and in high school, I was trying to get on the bone marrow registry because I just felt this kind of overwhelming desire to just help people. And I think that's, ultimately what made me go into healthcare, right? Is that, this desire to help people. And what I think people don't think about is, if you knew that person, if you saw their story on social media, you would probably be influenced and want to donate. But, there's when I saw it, I saw 90,000+ people on a registry. And what immediately came into my head was each one of their stories that I didn't know their stories, but it was just like the little girl that I had seen, that I had brought to my staff that day, right? They each had a story. They each had a reason to live. They each had this, horrible illness that was going to prevent them from being able to live. And I just felt this need to make a difference. And I think that, we live in a society that puts so much pressure on, the alignment to someone who's like you culturally, religiously, politically. And I've always been someone who said it doesn't matter, right? I filled prescriptions when I was a pharmacist early on. It didn't matter what type of person that was. I've worked in hospitals. It didn't matter what that person's background was. And so I think that for me, it was that ability to not only help someone, but the fact that you're helping just anyone on the list, it has a certain sense of satisfaction that you're not holding yourself to, helping a certain person because of alignment of your religious, cultural beliefs, or, but you're doing it just because you have the ability. And yes, it's a big ask. It's a big ask to remove an organ and give it to somebody. But I mean, I live just as same life I do today that I did the day before the transplant. I mean, it hasn't impacted my lifestyle at all. I'm still very active. I still run. I still exercise. I still ski. I still do all the things I did before. So I think that it gave me kind of not only this profound sense of being able to help a person, but it also gives you this profound sense of being able to help a person because they're just that. They're human. And they have every desire to live, no matter what their lifestyle is. They have a desire to live. And it wouldn't have mattered to me who she was, what, or how old she was, or what her beliefs were. The fact that I could help a human was really all I cared about. And so I think that, I think it's something that people don't hear about very often, but it gives me a profound amount of, joy. I mean, I there's no other word to say, I think, to explain, like, that you really helped somebody. And if you're a person who has that kind of altruistic nature to you, yes, it's a way to truly help someone that not many people can say that they've done, and it's awe-inspiring even for myself.
And it truly, it makes you a hero. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You were a hero to that lady. And of course, the people that are listening to this podcast, you're a hero to them. So I know that's not your reasoning, but you are now a hero.
Person. I mean, there's so many people that have done so much more for their neighbors and for their community than, one surgery that I did, but that are so much more deserving of the term hero. But if you can help people, and I try to help people in my daily life, right? And if you can help people pay it forward and be a person that just has that altruistic spirit, this world would be such a better place. And it doesn't have to be a kidney donation. There's obviously small ways that people help every day, but I think that the sense of volunteering at, an event or donations of blood or, anything, there's people underestimate what it does for your kind of personal mental health to be caring of others and to put, and to be respectful of all different walks of life and just care for others because they are humans just like we are, regardless. So, I think I don't consider myself a hero, but I think that, we should all try to emulate that hero mentality in our day-to-day life. And yes, I did it in a way that was, maybe, very, very big for one individual, my recipient, but she, she's deserving of having a great life. And, I wish I would have had, I wish I had more kidneys. I wish I could have helped more than one person. There's 90, great. The number was 92,652 or something the day I signed up. And now there's 92,651. I only helped one person. Well, and with the chain, obviously, if you're an altruistic donor, you can help more than one. There's several people that were likely helped by my one donation. And I think that's in and of itself an amazing gift, right? The fact that there's somebody in Seattle that has a kidney and they don't know that it's because one altruistic donor started a chain. There's somebody in Boston who has a kidney and it's part of my kidney chain. And I'll never know who those people are. And I wish I did, but I know that there's several people out there that are part of the chain that I started that were, infinitely helped by just one act of kindness.
I'll tell you one thing. I really, I admire your commitment and your thought too, that we're all humans, no matter, who we voted for, what religion we are, what color we are. And I think more people need to feel the way you do, even if they don't, donate the organs. But I really do appreciate what you've done. Now, is there more to your story or is there anything that you would like to let the people know before we let you go? But it is a truly amazing story, and not really knowing you, but as another fellow human being, I am very, very proud of you, young lady.
Well, thank you. I will say that it's a unique position coming off of a presidential election to know that one of your kidneys voted Democrat and one of your kidneys voted Republican. But I'm proud to say that we live in a country that can happen. So, I respect everyone's opinions, and I'm, very thankful that we can all really respect each other as people and humans, and, really live a life that puts each other ahead of ourselves, regardless of what the differences are in our cultural, religious, even geographic interests. I mean, I think that it's one world. We're all one being. We're living on one planet Earth, and whatever people can do to know that they're helping in a way that's personal to them, I think it's incredibly rewarding. It's incredibly rewarding for your personal sense of self and your own mental health. And I'm just glad that I had the opportunity to share my story.
Thank you, Carrie Tanner, not only for sharing your story, but for giving the gift of life. Join us again next week for another touching episode of Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. And if you have a transplant story you'd like to share, reach out to us. Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. Follow us on Facebook, Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. Until next time, I'm BJ Odom, thanking you for being a part of our journey and reminding us all to appreciate each and every day and to cherish the extraordinary gift of life.